Welcome! In this series of short videos, we will look at topics common to both the PowerBasic console and Windows compilers, and many other basic dialects. Today, we will look at while loops. I've set up a small common library to allow us to display information on the screen from a program regardless of whether you're using the Windows or the console compiler. For today's video, looking at while loops, I'm going to use the same code as we used for the for next loop. We have a small data array storing 6 long values. We have assigned each of these values to one element of the array, from 1 to 6. We set up 3 variables, one to point at the record within the array, one to be used to store the data we're taking out of the array, and a third variable to be used as a total. Now, in the last video we used the for next loop. We're going to take that out today and we're going to replace that with a while loop. While, when. These two statements define the beginning and the end of our while loop. Now, the while loop is slightly different from the for next. With a for next loop, the loop will loop through for each iteration between 1 and 6. We're basically going to do the same thing here, but in the while loop you can actually set it so that it never actually executes any of the code within the loop. The while loop will only start if the expression you give it returns true. For example, if we put long record is less than 6, since long record has just been initialized, its value will be 0. Therefore, this statement will be true. Now, if we run this as it stands, the program will go into an infinite loop, because this statement is true, therefore these lines of code will execute. It will then look back to here, and this statement is still true. So the one thing we have to do in a while loop is we have to remember to increment the record pointer. So the first time round, long record will be 0, we will increment it to 1, and then the program should run just like the for next loop did. It will display our 6 records and will give us a total. So what's the basic difference between the while and the for next loop? Well, if we want to actually put some logic in here, we can actually stop the while loop from executing at all. We've created a long variable called doIt, and we've set the value to be true. Now we can add an additional expression onto the while loop, and if this expression is true, which in this case it is, our program will run. If this is false, then the program will run, but the while loop will never be entered. And all we'll get is a 0 total. If it makes it easier to think about this in brackets, this is the equivalent. This is exactly the same. If this statement is true and this statement is true, then the while loop will execute. So how can we do with the while loop what we did with the for next loop? How can we exit from it? Well, we can do that. We can use the exit loop. We have to make this true, otherwise it would not execute at all. There we are, our first 3 records, and the 4th record triggers the exit from the loop. And exactly the same for the iterate. You can either do iterate loop, in which case it would go down to the end and loop back up again, or just use the word iterate, and the program will work out which loop we're actually in, and it will iterate that loop itself. So if we run this now, it will effectively ignore the 4th record, but process the 5th and the 6th record. As it does. So the major difference between the while loops and the for next loops is that the while loops can be set to conditionally test whether they should be run or not, based on however many expressions you put in at the top. A while loop could be used as a looping mechanism to wait for some event to happen, and when that event actually occurs, then the code could execute. So while a while loop performs many of the same kinds of functionality as a for next loop, it does give you a wee bit more flexibility. That's it for today. Thank you for watching.